Imagine a glitch in your timeline. A quiet, impossible broadcast appears on a forgotten device, showing you a single perfect moment from your life to come. Is it a warning, or is it a promise?
It began with the rain. Not real rain, of course. In Ethelberg, the sky is a carefully managed canvas, and precipitation is a scheduled, gentle affair that mists the upper-level sky lanes without ever inconveniencing those of us on the ground. The sound is what matters. A soft, programmed patter against the weather gel of my apartment window on the 72nd floor. It's a synthetic lullaby for a city that never truly sleeps, just dims its lights and lowers its voice. I've always found it comforting, a predictable rhythm in a life built on routine. My name is Elias Thorne, and I am a chronocartographer. I spend my days restoring fragmented data streams from the pre-synth era, piecing together digital ghosts. My work is quiet, meticulous, and deeply solitary, much like my life. My apartment is a reflection of this, sterile, minimalist, everything automated and whisper quiet, from the nutrient paste dispenser to the sonic shower. Everything except for one object, an anomaly, a relic, my grandfather's television. It sits in the corner of my living space like a shrine to a forgotten age, a bulky cathode ray tube beast with a wood veneer chassis and two antennae that stick up like rabbit ears. It doesn't connect to the city's data stream. It has no neural interface. It's a closed system, a museum piece. My grandfather insisted it could still pick up the whispers in the static, as he called them. Old broadcast remnants, solar flares, cosmic background radiation. To me, it was just a piece of him, a tangible memory in my otherwise intangible world. It hadn't been powered on in a decade, until tonight. The rain sound program was halfway through its cycle when a new sound cut through the quiet, a high-pitched whine, followed by the unmistakable electric crackle of a CRT powering up. I sat bolt upright on my sleep couch, my heart suddenly a frantic drum against the calm synthetic rhythm of the city. The room was bathed in a pale, flickering blue light. It was the television. It was on. My blood went cold. The power cord was coiled neatly behind it, plugged into a dead socket I'd never bothered to have activated. It was impossible. Yet the screen glowed, a swirling monochrome blizzard of static. The hiss filled my apartment, a sound so ancient and alien it felt like it was broadcasting from the beginning of time. I slid off the couch, my bare feet cold on the polished chrome floor, and crept towards it. The air around the television felt heavy, charged with ozone and something else, something I couldn't name, a feeling of being watched, not by a person, but by a moment.
Then, through the snowstorm of static, an image began to resolve. It was fuzzy, distorted at the edges, like a memory struggling to form. It was a room. My room. I was looking at my own apartment from the exact angle of the television. The perspective was nauseating. For a second, I thought it was just a reflection on the curved glass, but the image was too clear, too stable. And then I saw him. Me. I was standing by the kitchenette, my back to the screen. The figure wore my sleep clothes, had my slight build, my dark, unruly hair. I was reaching for the coffee synthesizer. The scene was utterly mundane, achingly normal, except for one detail. The chrono display on the wall behind my on-screen self read 7:14 a.m. It was currently 3:22 a.m. I stared, frozen, my breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a recording. There were no cameras in my apartment. It wasn't a live feed. It was something else. The static hissed and popped around the edges of the stable image. The man on the screen, my future self, tapped the synthesizer. He turned, holding a coffee mug, and my heart stopped. The mug wasn't one of mine. My mugs are plain, white, standard issue. This one was a deep ceramic blue with a delicate silver spiral pattern I'd never seen before. He took a sip, looking towards the window, a thoughtful expression on his face, an expression I recognized, but the context was all wrong. He seemed content. More than that, he seemed expectant, like he was waiting for someone. I felt a dizzying wave of vertigo, the sense of reality thinning around me like worn fabric. Was this a prank? A hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation? But the glow of the screen was real. The hum was real. The cold knot of dread in my stomach was undeniably real. I wanted to look away, to shut it off, but I couldn't. I was transfixed by this impossible window into a future that was only 4 hours away. The man on the screen finished his coffee, placed the blue mug carefully on the counter, and walked out of the frame. The screen held on to the empty kitchen for a moment longer. The chrono display flickered to 7:15 a.m. Then the image dissolved back into a chaotic blizzard of static. The high-pitched whine returned, and with a final soft pop, the screen went black. Silence rushed into the room, deeper and more profound than before. The programmed rain still pattered against the window. The city still hummed its quiet electric song. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. I stood there for what felt like an hour, staring at the dead screen, my mind racing. The power cord was still disconnected. The air still smelled faintly of ozone. I walked over to the kitchenette and ran my hand along the cool, smooth counter where the blue mug had been. There was nothing there. Of course there was nothing there. Not yet. I looked at the chrono display on my own wall. 3:28 a.m. I had a choice. I could dismiss it, call it a waking dream, a neurological hiccup, a glitch in my personal matrix. I could go back to my sleep couch, and when I woke up, I could deliberately use a different mug, or no mug at all. I could break the sequence, prove it was a fantasy, or I could wait. I could see what happens at 7:14 a.m., see if the impossible happens twice. And in the silent, blue-lit dark of my apartment, a single, terrifying, and exhilarating thought took root. The broadcast wasn't a glitch. It was a message. And I had no idea who was sending it or why. But the image of that blue mug was burned into my memory. A single, solid object in a sea of questions. A promise of a future that was, until tonight, completely unwritten.
Sleep was impossible.
The remaining hours until dawn stretched into an eternity of silent debate. Every rational part of my mind, the part that organized data fragments and believed in cause and effect, screamed that it was a hallucination, a complex, stress-induced anomaly of the brain. I should deactivate the apartment's power grid, seal the room in darkness, and prove the phantom wrong. But another part of me, a quieter, more ancient part I hadn't heard from in years, was captivated. It was the same part of me that, as a child, had listened to my grandfather's stories of signals caught between worlds. He believed the universe was humming with forgotten conversations, and with the right receiver, you could listen in. I looked at his television, dark and silent now, and felt a profound, illogical loyalty to his belief. I would not break the sequence. I would wait. I did nothing. I simply sat on the cool floor, watching the chrono display on the wall, and waited for my future to arrive. At 7:10 a.m., a soft chime echoed through the apartment. The delivery chute. My pulse quickened. I never received unscheduled deliveries. My nutrient paste and filtered water arrived on a strict weekly schedule. Nothing else ever came. I walked over to the small glowing panel on the wall and pressed the receiver plate. A compartment slid open with a whisper of hydraulics, revealing a small cube-shaped package wrapped in plain, gray synth paper. There was no sender address, no recipient identification. It was a ghost package, an impossibility in Ethelberg's flawlessly tracked logistics network. My fingers trembled as I unwrapped it. Inside, nestled in a bed of soft recycled foam, was a mug. A ceramic mug, the color of a deep twilight sky, with a delicate silver spiral that seemed to shimmer even in the low light of my apartment. I lifted it out. It was heavy, real. The ceramic was cool and smooth beneath my fingertips. I stared at it, turning it over and over. It was beautiful. An artisan piece, something handmade and unique in a world of mass-produced perfection. It was an object with a story, and I had no idea what that story was. I looked at the wall, 7:13 a.m. 1 minute. Taking a deep breath that did little to calm the frantic hummingbird in my chest, I walked to the kitchenette. I placed the mug under the synthesizer spout. My hand moved as if guided by a will that was not entirely my own. I selected coffee black. The machine hummed. As the dark liquid filled the blue ceramic, the chrono display flickered to 7:14 a.m. I picked up the mug, the warmth spreading through my palms, and turned towards the window. The synthetic morning light of the city was beginning to brighten, casting long, soft shadows across my floor. And in that moment, the feeling I had seen on my future self's face washed over me. It was not just contentment. It was a profound sense of rightness, of arrival. The feeling of expectancy was real. I was waiting. I just didn't know for what. The rest of the day was a blur. I tried to work, to lose myself in the familiar comfort of restoring fragmented data. But the digital ghosts of the past felt hollow, meaningless. My own life had suddenly become a far more compelling mystery. I kept looking at the blue mug on my desk, a solid anchor in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. Who sent it? How did they bypass the city's network? How did they know? The questions multiplied with every passing hour. forming a web with the old television at its center. I ran diagnostics on the television's power source, finding nothing. I scanned its chassis for any sign of modification, any hidden transmitter or receiver. It was exactly as it had always been, an inert, obsolete box of wires and glass. It gave up no secrets. As evening fell and the city lights began their vibrant nightly dance, a sense of dread and anticipation began to build in me again. I didn't bother with the rain program. I just sat in the dark, watching the television, waiting for it to call to me again. And it did. The same time as before, 3:22 a.m. The high-pitched whine, the crackle, the sudden bath of cold, blue light. The static on the screen felt familiar now, almost like a greeting. This time, however, the image that coalesced was not my apartment. It was a place I recognized, but had not visited in years. The old Meridian Park, one of the few ground-level preservation zones in the city where things were allowed to be real. Real trees with rough bark, real grass that was sometimes damp and uneven, a sky open to the actual, unpredictable weather. In the center of the frame was a bench, slick with what looked like real rain, and I was sitting on it, my on-screen self, wearing a jacket I owned but rarely wore. He looked pensive, staring up at the canopy of leaves as water dripped from them. The chrono display on a public information pillar behind the bench was visible, though blurry. It seemed to read 14:30, 2:30 in the afternoon. Then a figure entered the frame from the right. A woman. Her hair was the color of autumn leaves, a rich auburn that the broadcast captured with surprising vividness. She was holding a clear umbrella, and she moved with a quiet grace. I couldn't see her face clearly. It was tilted down, obscured by the rain and the poor quality of the signal. She stopped in front of my future self. He looked up, and a slow smile spread across his face. A genuine, unforced smile that I felt more than I saw. And then I heard it. A voice. My voice, coming through the static-laced speaker of the television. It was only one word, but it was perfectly clear, perfectly resonant. Ilara. The woman, Ilara, looked up at the sound of her name. For a single, heart-stopping frame, her face was clear. She was smiling back. And then the image dissolved. The screen fizzed, the picture collapsed into a single bright point of light, and the television went dark. I was left in the echoing silence, the name reverberating in my mind. Ilara. I didn't know anyone named Ilara. The name was as foreign to me as the blue mug had been. But I knew the park, and I knew the time. This was different from the first broadcast. That was a passive observation. This was an invitation, a summons. It was asking me to do more than just wait in my apartment. It was asking me to go somewhere, to step out of my sterile, predictable life
and into the frame of that impossible picture. To meet a woman's name I had only just learned from a ghost in a machine. My old life, the life of quiet routines and restored data, was over. I could feel it ending, and a new one, terrifying and beautiful, was waiting for me on a rain-slicked bench in Meridian Park. I had to go. I had to know.
Leaving the apartment felt like stepping off a cliff. My entire existence had been confined to the clean, predictable altitudes of Ethelberg's upper spires. To go to Meridian Park, I had to descend. The journey downward in the public transport tube was a journey through the city's hidden layers. The whisper-quiet hum of the upper levels gave way to a rising cacophony of noise. The soft, ambient light was replaced by a chaotic dance of neon advertisements and the grimy glow of industrial zones. The air itself changed, growing thick with the smells of fried food, damp synth concrete, and the unfamiliar, organic scent of crowds. It was overwhelming, a sensory assault that made me want to retreat back to the sterile safety of my 72nd floor sanctuary. But the image of the woman in the park, Ilara, was a beacon pulling me forward. Meridian Park was an anomaly, a pocket of the old world preserved under a vast, transparent dome that let in the real, unfiltered sky. It was raining when I arrived, just as the broadcast had shown. Not the gentle, programmed misting of the upper levels, but a genuine, cold, and messy downpour. Droplets clung to the leaves of the gnarled oak trees and pooled in muddy patches on the worn stone pathways. I pulled the collar of my jacket tighter, feeling utterly out of place. I found the bench from the vision easily. It was empty, glistening under the gray light. I sat down, the damp wood seeping cold through my clothes. I had brought the blue mug with me, wrapped carefully in my satchel. I didn't know why, but it felt like a passport, proof that I belonged in this impossible moment. I checked the public chronopillar. 14:15. 15 minutes to wait. The longest 15 minutes of my life. Every rustle of leaves, every distant shout made my head snap up. Doubt began to poison the anticipation. I was a fool, sitting on a wet bench in a forgotten park, chasing a ghost from a television. This was madness, a sophisticated delusion my mind had constructed. I was about to stand up, to surrender to the rational explanation and return to my empty, logical life, when I saw her, a flash of auburn hair at the edge of the clearing. She was walking along the path, holding a simple, clear umbrella that caught the light like a jewel. My breath hitched. She moved with the same quiet grace I had witnessed on the screen, her head tilted slightly against the rain. Time seemed to slow down, each footstep a soft drumbeat counting down to a moment that would redefine my reality. She drew closer. I could see her face now, thoughtful and serene. She wasn't looking at me. She seemed lost in her own world. She was going to walk right past me. My heart hammered against my ribs. The broadcast had been so clear. I had spoken to her. I had to speak. My throat was dry, my voice a stranger in my own ears as I forced out the single word I'd heard through the static. Ilara.
She stopped. She turned, her expression one of polite, mild surprise. Her eyes were green, the color of the damp moss on the trees around us. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice soft, gentle. "Have we met?" Her words hit me like a physical shock. That wasn't right. In the broadcast there was recognition, a shared smile. This was a deviation, a glitch in the glitch. Panic flared in my chest. Was it all a lie? A trick? My hand instinctively went to my satchel. Without thinking, I pulled out the blue ceramic mug. "This," I said, my voice trembling. "You're supposed to know about this." I held it out to her. Ilara's eyes fell upon the mug, and the world shifted. Her polite smile faltered. Her face went pale. A storm of emotions passed through her eyes. Confusion, disbelief, dawning recognition, and then a wave of profound, heartbreaking sorrow that seemed to age her in an instant. She took a half step back, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's not possible," she whispered, her gaze fixed on the silver spiral pattern. "Where did you get that?" I told her everything. The words tumbled out of me in a frantic, desperate rush. About my grandfather's television, the disconnected cord, the vision of my kitchen, the untraceable delivery. I told her about the second vision, of this very park, this very bench, and her face appearing from the rain. She listened, her expression unreadable, her green eyes searching my face as if looking for a ghost. When I finished, silence fell between us, broken only by the sound of the rain on her umbrella. "My grandfather," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "He had a television just like that. He was a dreamer, a physicist who believed in unconventional theories. He called them entangled instruments." She looked from the mug back to me, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek. "He built two. He gave one to his closest friend, a chronocartographer's grandfather." The pieces clicked into place with a terrifying, beautiful finality. The main conflict, the great mystery of who was sending the broadcasts, resolved itself, not with a bang, but with a tearful whisper. "I am not from your future, Elias," she said, her voice trembling as she spoke my name for the first time. "I'm from your past." "No," she corrected herself, shaking her head as if to clear it. "It's all simultaneous. I'm from our past, the life we lived together." She took a deep breath. "In my time this morning, you passed away. After 50 years together. It was peaceful. You were old. And I missed you. I missed you so much I thought my heart would break. I went to the attic and I found the old television. I wanted to remember the beginning, our beginning, right here, on this bench. She gestured around us at the rain-soaked park. I turned it on, and I closed my eyes, and I remembered this day with all my heart. Her gaze met mine, full of a love so deep and ancient it defied time itself. It wasn't a broadcast, Elias. It wasn't a message to guide you. It was an echo. My memory, my love for you, echoing back through time through two old, impossible machines. What you saw, it wasn't your future. It was my most cherished memory of our past.
The rain continued to fall, a soft, persistent drum against the thin shield of her umbrella. We stood there, on the warm stone path, two figures suspended in a moment that defied all logic. The air between us was charged, not with tension, but with a quiet, shimmering awe. He passed away this morning. 50 years from now? I just met her. My mind, the part that dealt in linear data and predictable timelines, struggled to reconcile the two truths. It was like trying to look at two ends of a long, beautiful ribbon at the same time, the beginning and the end, held together by the impossible knot of her grief and my discovery. The frantic panic in my chest had subsided, replaced by a profound, sea-deep calm. The loneliness that had been the silent wallpaper of my entire life was gone. It hadn't just been erased. It had been revealed as an illusion. I wasn't a solitary man living in a sterile apartment. I was a man at the beginning of a love story so powerful that it sent an echo back through time to find him. "You're a potter," I said, the words coming to me as a sudden clear thought. I looked down at the blue mug still in my hand. "You made this." A real smile touched her lips, a fragile, watery thing, but it reached her green eyes. "It was the first piece I was ever truly proud of," she said. "I gave it to you on our 3rd anniversary. You used it every morning for the next 47 years. She looked at it, and I knew she wasn't just seeing a ceramic mug. She was seeing 1,000 shared mornings, a lifetime of quiet companionship. The visions hadn't been linear. They were emotional. She had thought of our beginning, and her memory had sent back the symbol of our entire domestic life, the blue mug, as a preface.
She collapsed the umbrella, letting the cool rain fall on both of us. It felt like a baptism. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice choked with a sorrow that was 50 years old and a wonder that was brand new. "I didn't mean to interfere, to break things. I was just remembering." I reached out, my fingers hesitating for a moment before I gently touched her hand. Her skin was real, warm. "You didn't break anything, Ilara," I said, and saying her name now felt completely natural, like a word I had always known. "You finished a story our grandfathers started. You built a bridge. We started to walk, leaving the bench behind. We didn't have a destination. For the first time in my life, I wasn't following a schedule or a routine. I was just walking with her. The messy, unpredictable world of the lower levels no longer felt threatening. The scent of the damp earth, the noise of the city beyond the park, the feeling of the rain on my face,
It all felt real, vibrant, alive. I had spent my career as a chronocartographer, meticulously piecing together the pasts of others. Now I was standing at the genesis of my own. We talked as we walked. We talked about her work with clay and my work with data. We talked about our grandfathers, imagining them as young men, tinkering with their impossible machines, dreaming of sending whispers through the static. We didn't talk about the 50 years that lay between this moment and the morning she had just endured. We didn't need to. That life was a promise, not a script. The visions hadn't been a map to be followed, but a gift. The knowledge that the path ahead, with all its unwritten joys and sorrows, would lead to a place of such profound love, was the greatest inheritance anyone could ever receive. We emerged from the park as the rain began to subside. Before us, the spires of Athelberg pierced the clouds, gleaming in the clearing afternoon light. It was the same city I had woken up in, but it looked entirely different. It was no longer a cage of quiet solitude, but a vast, open canvas, a place where I would learn the story behind a blue mug, where I would share 50 years of mornings, where I would build a life worthy of such a beautiful memory. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice soft. She was looking at me, her eyes full of the past and the present, grief and hope all at once. For her, this was an echo. For me, it was a first impression. I thought of the old television, silent in my apartment. Its purpose was fulfilled. The message had been delivered. It would remain a monument to a miracle, but its voice was no longer needed. The whispers in the static had fallen silent, replaced by the sound of her breathing next to me. I took her hand in mine, our fingers lacing together. It felt like coming home. "Now," I said, looking away from the past and into her eyes, into our unwritten beginning, "we get a cup of coffee."
Disclaimer: all stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional. They are created to inspire imagination, reflection, and thoughtful dialogue about the future, our relationships, and the human experience.
Glitch recorded. Returning to standby.